And for me, this is a tool to deliver songs. If there were only Doc Watson songs, our ears would still be full.
This is the nice big shiny one.
I love it. Wow, it's beautiful too, and it sounds so good. Big. See this one on the stage and hear it on recordings shot. There ought to be, I got two, and then whatever you guys brought.
He was generous about that. And there was a time that I was doing the inlay work. I don't have time now. But it's almost spiritual to inlay his name. We want to talk about Doc Watson a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Doc.
And your connection, with Doc.
And your connection with Doc.
And my connection with Doc. And I'll tell you, my part of it's a lot easier, I think, than yours. Not as involved. But
we'll see.
I had this, when I heard that Gallagher was closing, I'd been following it. I knew they were declining, not building much anymore. And when they closed, it was just like such a sad thing. I grew up close to Gallagher. Learned my first guitar chords on a Gallagher. I had this connection, and maybe as much as sentimentality as anything else, but anyway, it's like, I wonder if there's a way to keep it going. But having stepped into it, I have gained such a deeper appreciation for the history, and especially the connection to Doc. Like I was telling you, when I do an inlay of Doc's name that he gave us to use, there's just something extraordinary about it.
Let's see that inlay. You were telling me that you were the inlay guy.
Well, I have someone who's better and smarter and all that stuff doing it now.
Oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Y'all see that?
But I was part of that. And it's just the connection to think that he handed that off to us. And so we have this treasure, to take care of.
Just like Doc imparted something to you and to Gallagher Guitars, and he certainly imparted something to me and to the Old Crow Medicine Show,
right,
when he really took us under his wings and gave us our first big break as a band. Before we had made any recordings of note or were worth anything in any bars and the Tri-Cities or otherwise. Nancy, you were talking about Karen,
right,
Merle's daughter. Well, Nancy is Merle's sister.
Right.
And Doc and Rosalie's daughter. Nancy is a real fixture in the high country and around Boone, North Carolina. Of course, Doc was raised at Deep Gap.
Right.
And there was this day she was, I guess, in town, and we'd been in town in Boone, we'd been there about 6 months, and didn't quite know what to make of Boone. We were so interested in, I call this time the Hillbilly Boot Camp, because we were just really going after an element, what felt like a remnant Appalachian culture that nobody our age was really doing it, but there were some old people who still were. But there were people that were middle-aged that, this is when the satellite dishes get affixed to the trailer park. That's when we were there. And life is, there's an evolution happening in the Southern Highlands, and but the life that Doc was brought into really represents for Old Crow the true vine or cornerstone of all the music that was important to us, all of the folk pathways that we sought to go down ourselves. And we were in that region looking for people to point us in that direction.
Okay.
And we never thought that it would be Doc Watson. For me, it was this.
Can I ask why you didn't think it would be Doc Watson? Because that was some of the draw, no doubt.
I just hadn't listened to Doc that much. I had one recording when I was a kid of a show with Merle live, maybe at the bitter end or something in New York. It was from the 70s. It was really exciting. And he did Mama Don't Allow, and that's where I learned that song, and I played that song in iterations of bands all around the country. In fact, we just recorded it for a Grand Ole Opry record, straight from Doc's mouth to my ear. But I think because, I would listen to him playing with like Gaither Carlton on those recordings, and that's what I was most interested in. What was so interesting to me was that Doc came from, Doc was kind of a rock and roller.
Right.
And so when he was busking on King Street in Boone,
Yeah.
he needed a place to plug in his amp.
Right.
And when we were busking on King Street in Boone, we were 18, and so we were highly idealistic about what we wanted
You were
and what
18.
we weren't.
Yes.
And what we weren't was, we were like, I don't know, we were so rock and roll that we were not rock and roll. We were so punk
So
rock.
did you have your amps?
No, we had
No.
clawhammer banjos
Okay.
and fiddles and mohawks.
Well, Ken, that reminds me of the song Doc's Day.
Yeah.
Right. And you used a phrase in there about it being, I don't remember if you said rock and roll or it makes it rock. That you brought rock into it somehow.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what that is. I wrote that one a
But
while ago.
it was a hillbilly that came up and said you need, back to Doc's Day.
Yeah. Let me do a little bit. Look at that.
Okay.
Well, we were rolling down King Street at 11:45 when we found a little corner to play. So we plugged in our guitars, tightened our drums, and hollered out, hey, hey, hey. When this old hillbilly with a cheek full of chaw wandered on over to our tip jar, he said, I like what I see, but it's not like I saw way back in old Doc's day. If you want to rock, listen to Doc. If you want the girls, better pick like Merle. I can't remember what goes after that. I haven't done that one in a little while.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. But yes, if you want to rock.
If you want to
like
rock,
Doc.
listen to Doc.
Listen to Doc.
Yeah, it took us a little while to understand that what was happening when Doc walked up to us, when Nancy Watson threw $1 in our tip jar and said, let me go get my dad, he loves this kind of music, I'll be right back. Will y'all be here for a while? Will Yoons be here for a while, she asked. When she walked back with Doc, we just didn't know how important it was going to be. I don't think we understood that the folk revival could have such an impact so many years after, that these records from Newport, Rhode Island, that brought about this brought to national attention a blind street performer from Deep Gap, North Carolina, that it would have a place for us in the story too.
Yes.
And yet it really did, and a powerful one, because Doc gave us a gig on the spot, and Doc opened all these doors for us with just one little flip, And because of the way things are when you're 18 or 19, when someone gets to you and gives you a gift, you tend to get like this with them as soon as it's done, Like I wanted to
Around him.
yeah, I wanted him to know how grateful we were, and
Okay.
we started writing letters, and
Nice.
but Doc never really
Well, that
never
was a
got
nice
any.
young man to do that, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I knew how to do, but
Yeah.
but Doc was pretty cool, man. He was pretty rock and roll, and he was not. I mean, our presence. It happened in this moment, and then we did some shows with Doc, but after that, like, it was never like that again. It's not like he wasn't going to give us a second big break. And after someone gives you a big break like that, it'd be like if you met Babe Ruth and you got his autograph, but then you also saw him like the next day and the day after that. And you're like, it's still like Babe Ruth just walked by, but now it's like,
I gave you my autograph.
yeah, I already gave it to you, kid. What else? I'm.
Yeah. And he responded he liked your music, opened the door for you, invited you to Merle Fest, even
Yeah.
though you had to play at the Fountain stage or something like that. Remember?
When Doc opens the door for you, it's up to you to widen the crack.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit like that, and yet it was the best break we had. It was really the only shot that we had. That I don't know that you get shots like this. This was the opportunity that was going to make the difference between a band that's now 23 years old and a band that probably would have fizzled out the next summer if it hadn't have gotten a big break.
Wow, that's something to think about. Of course, I thought about you were like 18, 19 years old at that time. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay. And, I thought about, what were your parents thinking?
I think they
that,
thought.
that you were willing to take off and pursue this?
I think my parents were probably probably more concerned than Doc's parents were. The world that I grew up in versus Doc Watson's world was already, largely discovered. When you think about being raised and being born, and when was Doc born? Like the mid-20s?
Yes.
That world and living in the Southern Highlands versus, being a city kid, urbanite, growing
Right,
up in the
right.
80s, in Harrisonburg, Virginia, we're talking about. I think that's one of the things that made it so fascinating about the moment that I shared with Doc Watson was that
Okay.
I just assumed this was all a exhumation,
Right.
we were just unearthing something that had been in the ground.
And here he is.
And yet here he is. But I remember talking to Marty one time about Roscoe Holcomb, and he said that seasoned players like Ralph and Carter Stanley took him out on the road, and they brought him to Europe. And Marty had asked the Stanley brothers or Ralph about that experience, bringing out somebody from way up in the holler to Europe.
Right.
And they said to Marty, man, he was just scared of everything.
Right.
So I think of Doc's world as being a world in which being scared of everything was a lot more commonplace because, the difference between Deep Gap and New York City is a
Phenomenal.
chasm.
Right.
And yet for my generation, like New York City was on TV every day and so was Appalachia. We could see it all at the same time and know that this is where humanity goes.
Yeah.
Some of us live in the desert. The desert is like this. We all watch Sesame Street. It's like there wasn't that much mystery in the world. It was pretty spelled out.
Okay.
If you were born in my year than if you were born in Doc's year.
Yeah. So your parents, they trusted you in that way.
I
That,
guess.
like, this guy's going to figure it out. Because,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I met Doc Watson in the first 2 years, so
Yeah, but still, that's 2 years.
yeah, they had. I mean, but how. I'd already lived away from home. I didn't live at
Okay.
home through my high school years. I was a pretty independent kid.
Okay. Well, you do stand up for social causes. You have your way of expressing, having some input about things that you see as important to you, and I appreciate that.
Well, thanks. I think that musicians have to speak what's true to their heart. One of the things that I thought Doc accomplished so beautifully was Doc never allowed himself to be one kind of anything. And yet, it's such a singular kind of idea that we think of as the Appalachian.
Right.
It has elements of the noble savage as we examine what the American thinking is of where we place the
Right.
hillbilly.
Yeah.
Most of us are not that, and so there's already the distance of otherness that one would attach to somebody like Doc Watson. Plus, he's a blind man.
Right.
That's an experience that so few of us that have our vision, we just
Could
can't
relate
understand
to.
it. We
Yeah.
can't relate to it. It's so other. So the fact that this guy's already other, it's really easy to say that music does this, or Doc's role is this in the world. What I loved about Doc is that that part of him that was looking for a plug for his amplifier on King Street in the early 1950s stayed with him his whole life. He was always looking for something other than just what this represented,
Yeah.
folk songs.
Yeah.
He wanted to sing torch ballads. He wanted to sing flamenco. He went
did.
everywhere with his voice.
Right.
And it's his voice because I'm a guitar player, but I love songs most of all. And for me, this is a tool to deliver songs. Doc's deliverance of songs, what a wave. I just want that to crash over me. If there were only Doc Watson songs, our ears would still be full.
Do you have a favorite Doc Watson song when you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a bunch of favorites, but I'll play you one that I've always loved that he learned,
Okay.
I think, from the Delmore brothers. Blue railroad train Makes me feel so doggone blue to listen to that old smokestack. Come back again, let me hear your whistle blow. Taking the sun, leaving the rain, and I hate to see you go.
Nice. That's Doc Watson.
Well, he had me over to his house a couple times, the whole band. He called us one morning and he said, "Boys, I want you to come out and cut some wood for me." And we were like, you never saw a bunch of dudes quit, like, ash their cigarettes
Immediately.
and jump to the...
Yeah.
Everybody leapt out of whatever ne'er-do-well spot they were in that old house. And we all jumped into probably one of 3 cars to get us all down to the mountain. And we went over to Deep Gap. And on the way, we stopped at the Wildcat store up there. It was like a junk store. So they just had a sign on the side that said Wildcat Store, you know. And in there, I bought I found a 78 for $1 of Clarence Ashley doing the Cuckoo Bird, you know. And what I really wanted to talk to Doc about was Clarence Ashley, and about the you know, the music that he grew up listening to, because as a musician I was so attached to the music of the 20s. I thought the 20s were the greatest. You didn't need nothing else. So anyway, we get over to his house and I've got my record with me and I can't wait to show him my copy of the Cuckoo Bird, and then we're going to cut some wood and we go walking right in, and Doc has Doc lived in a, like, sort of an extended, it was like a kind of a trailer kind of vibe, maybe a double wide.
Okay.
And there was like a portico tacked onto his kitchen, which was the main entrance to the place. It had sort of had a real homespun quality. And we slid open his glass door and we all walked in, and there was Rosalie, and she gave us a big smile, and then Doc came in out of an interior room and he said, "What's this all about?" And we told him, "Hey, we're here to cut wood." And then he said, "I never called nobody about cutting no wood." And we said, "Oh, yeah, we got your message that you left last week about cutting wood." And he denied it, right? And so we just felt,
I love this.
We felt, I did not love it. It felt very,
okay.
It was just like when you go to get your autograph from Ozzie Smith and he's like, "I'm not signing no more cards." And you're like, "But you got your Sharpie
you
right
called.
there. You said I could get." So anyway, he didn't want us to cut wood, it turned out. And
He had something else in mind?
we hoped, but then he said, "You boys can listen while I pick." And Richard showed up. And you never saw a stranger sight than 8 band members sitting around watching Richard and Doc play. And, you know, Richard was a little hungover at the time.
Okay.
And, I mean, we probably were too. But Richard was noticeably not wanting to be there. So, and Doc kept making him practice and practice and practice. It was really odd that Doc chose that moment to channel. It was like a loyalty thing, you know? It was weird to show up in somebody's home. He got flustered. He said he didn't call us. Then he called his grandson and made him do something. And, it, you know, instead of like, we would have played anything. We would have done any chore, anything.
Right. But he wanted you to sit and listen.
But instead he had us sit and listen.
Yeah.
You were invited into his family in some way, and you got to see actual family dynamics.
Oh,
and to
yeah.
feel like, oh, what is happening?
Yeah, that part's always a little eerie when you know, you're so used to seeing the glossy 8x10.
He wasn't on the stage. He was in his house.
That made me kick into this mode of like, well, I'm going to make Doc love us no matter what. So I started writing Rosalie and Nancy.
Okay.
And then we started up a really nice correspondence,
Yeah.
you know, in which I wrote them from Nashville. We're living in Nashville now. Boy, everything's so big down here. Kind of just saying whatever it felt like one would say in a letter.
Yeah, well, it must have felt just extremely special to you. You wanted to keep that connection.
Yeah. And Nancy called me, you know, long after Doc had died. I mean, maybe 5 years later, and that's why I started thinking about you guys, because I always felt like there was a little candle that the Watson family asked Old Crow to have and carry.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, there was no expectation of it,
Yeah.
but they gave it to us. They lit it,
Right.
and I just wanted to keep it lit forever because it felt so special.
Well, let me share a couple of J.W. Gallagher stories.
Yeah, let me hear it.
With a connection with Doc. And some of these things, again, I'm just soaking up whatever stories I get to help better connect me. We had a gentleman who wanted to order a Gallagher guitar. He wanted a particular one. He'd had one when he was a very young man, like 19 or so. And he'd driven with his girlfriend up from Atlanta, like, oh, this Gallagher guitar seems interesting. Let's go visit. They get in their car and they drive and drive and drive. And War Trace was in the middle of nowhere. And they drive into War Trace. And by that time, it's dark. And the only place is open is a pool hall. And they ask, do you know where J.W. Gallagher lives? And so they step out and point him, the street and the house. And they go up and knock on the door. Now, this is what the guy tells me. It's got to be God's honest truth, right? He knocks on the door with his girlfriend at night, and J.W. opens the door in his boxers and says, yeah, come on in. And he gets attired properly and leads them around and says, this is Doc's bedroom when he visits, and I made that bed for him. And so then they went down to the shop. He called Don, and they went down to the shop together. And here he is, 19 years old, soaking all this up. But it's getting late. J.W.'s excited to talk about guitars. And he says, J.W., I appreciate this, but it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I got to get back to Atlanta. But he contacted us, and we built this guitar for him. Because that was so meaningful to have that connection to J.W., to Doc, represented in that guitar.
It just seems like Doc is woven into the story.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's woven into the story of so many things in bluegrass and old time music.
Right.
Any of the music's coming out of North Carolina, Kentucky, Virginia, East Tennessee. But what makes it even more profound is the way that it's not just the songs or what you hear. It's what you pick up.
Right.
That you can play the instrument. And I think about these guys on the phone. Doc did a lot of business on the telephone in his life.
Okay.
When he called us to cut wood, that was just part of a greater lifelong expression of Doc on the phone. That's one thing that Doc had almost from the beginning. Like I'm guessing they probably would have got a telephone in the 60s. And I remember one time I went to Faulkner's house and in Oxford, and they were redoing a wing of the house, and they let us in, and we went into the kitchen, and we used to have those telephone tables,
Right.
yes. in your kitchen.
Yeah.
You'd
Or the
only ever
hallway.
have, or the hallway next to the kitchen anyway. So that's where his phone table was, and above it you just saw all the things he had written down, the numbers, the airport in Memphis, his agent in New York, dates on the calendar, little drawings.
The very human part of
Yeah,
making plans.
those connections that one has to the greater world. I think particularly as in a lot of the scholarship around Doc that I've participated in, I always come around to what it must be like for a blind person reaching into the tactile world and using a different sense to make shape of the world
Right.
than his eyes.
Right.
And the way that must open your heart in ways that somebody like me just can only appreciate. The way that Doc's singing was also a kind of communication echolocation, a kind of spatial understanding and recognition. Just an amazing guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very special to that you got to spend time with him. I never met him. So, and that he has this place that now in a way connects you to these guitars too. And we're really happy that you're interested in what we're doing and supportive of what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the story of instruments in the hands of bluegrass and old time country musicians is they're often in your hands because somebody that made them handed them to you.
Yeah.
Either that, or you went to a place like the Wildcat General Store and you bought it for, or a pawn shop. I mean, the ways that we get instruments are myriad, but there's often the craftsmanship that's in our songs and in our storytelling is also in the instruments themselves. So it makes sense that a discerning-minded rube like Doc Watson's going to pick up an axe that makes sense to him, where he loves who he gets to talk to on the other end of the telephone.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about the legacy of Doc, and how are you guys? I got my little Watson candle in one hand,
Yes.
And you've got one right here emblazoned in this guitar.
Right.
How is Gallagher carrying the torch of the Doc Watson story?
Well, it's interesting because, again, this was so much bigger than I imagined it would be. I didn't fully comprehend the importance of what we're doing. And one of the ways it's come to me about how important it is, we just built, that's a Doc Watson signature model. We just built another one for a gentleman who is so excited. He doesn't want me to ship it to him. He wants to come and pick it up with his own hands and take it back in his own possession. And he emailed me about his happiness of having this guitar that really started a desire from when he saw Doc in 1986. And I get emails like that all the time.
Yeah.
Or the circle, will the circle be unbroken? And
The
how
album.
it transformed people and the connection they feel to Doc Watson, and therefore also to these guitars. So it's a huge responsibility. I'll tell you one other story. I knew something about the story of the creation of the Doc Watson model because he played the G50 for a long time, Old Hoss and Will the Circle Be Unbroken.
Yeah.
So he and Merle and T. Michael were playing up at Exit Inn. This was about 73, I think. And J.W. drove up to Nashville to have dinner with them at TGI Fridays over close to Exit Inn. And J.W. said, I want to build you another guitar. And Doc was ready with his list of 4 things that he wanted, including, back to plugging in the amp days, he wanted that Les Paul neck profile.
Wow.
And so we carry those things on, his wishes of what he wanted that guitar to be. We have that profile that we honor. It's his guitar. And so we are carrying on.
Well, there's a whole new generation that's learning the legacy of Doc Watson in a way we're all torchbearers of something that's been passed to us. I love this line because it's Roy Acuff who gets a lot of the credit for country music, and of course Roy and Doc were close. Roy says that what makes country music so special is that it's not learned, it's inherited. So if we all have this inheritance, then we're all flame keepers of it. We can keep it bright.
Yeah.
There's a whole new generation of young people who are discovering Doc and Merle Watson through their recordings, and that's going to happen generation after generation. And there's kids who are picking apart those flat pick solos,
Trying to learn
note
those
for
lines.
note to learn those lines. Vocalists studying that almost savant quality of his voice to shape shift and the ranginess of his voice. What a bard! We to me, I mean, if with my eyes closed, it sounds even better.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate the time very much.
Yeah,
And we
I
look
wanna play
forward
some
to
of these
big
other
things.
guitars, too.
Yeah, check out that Jumbo.
So this is the new Gallagher Jumbo I've been hearing about.
Jumbo. It's new to the lineup.
I love it. Wow, it's beautiful too, and it sounds so good. Big. Oh, I can't wait to see this one on the stage and hear it on recordings. This last record that we made that comes out in April
You want to see this one?
features this instrument, and it's probably still in the same tuning. Oh, I thought it was still in drop D. Reasons to Run. My old time but now they all flown away. And it's just me here now to make the miles add up to a lifelong road. Well, I'll try to keep the wheel steady as she goes. Then the band kicks in here. Hey, the Lone Ranger still rides, and I hope he's having fun. But with every passing season, I'm running out of reasons, running out of reasons to run. Goes on a little bit after that.
Nice.
Hey, I'm Ketch Secor from Old Crow Medicine Show, and I'm playing this beautiful Gallagher guitar. Tell us more about it, Dave.
I'm Dave with Gallagher Guitars, and we're here with Ketch, and got to talking about being at Merle Fest together, and we want everybody to come out to the booth and everything, but you can also sign up for our newsletter and social media, so we hope you'll do that and be following us.
The camera loves him.